Hi. In this lesson, we're going to talk about another CRUD type next to data statements. It's probably the next most exciting CRUD types that you would encounter. You'll probably use this more than any other CRUD type in a typical application. It's called an instantiator. Again, you create it just as you create any other CRUD, which is right-click, new, and you say create me a new instantiator. What an instantiator really is a way to create data structures. I mentioned uh, data sources previously. Again, I'll show you an example of a data source, which is just configuration information for a database system. That's an example of a data structure. In a typical programming environment, you would usually either store that information maybe in a config file, maybe in the database file, in some other way, so that you read it when you need to use it in your application. What instantiators do is allow you to define configurations and pull them into your environment programmatically. So these are CRUDs. Instantiators are CRUD just like any other CRUD type. You can associate pre-actions with them, post-action, security, parameterization. Um, Primarily, they expose the parameterization mechanism so that you can use them as objects, so that these name value pairs here, you get to use them within your application just as plain old objects. You can, if you call it CRUD type that is an instantiator, the object that is returned, you can reference the properties using the dot notation, just like you would reference any other object. You can even return an object of a particular type, say a Java object of a particular class type. So you're looking at a data source here, and you can see it has all the properties. If you were to run this, we'll do a test run of it. So as you can see, it returned the object here, name, driver class, type, and URL. Those are all properties, and they're objects. If you're using this in a script, you'll get just a nice object that you can use and reference those properties. So those are instantiators. They're extremely powerful. If you've ever had to manage different configuration information in separate files or property files or wherever else you store your configuration, you're going to have a big smile on your face when you have to use instantiators, because it basically gives you uh, a million different functionalities without you having to ever write a single line of code. And it's not just dumb configuration information. It's basically, think of it, it's an executable construct. So you invoke it within your application just as you would invoke any other entities, whether it's a data statement or a script executor. And so this is used, as you can see on the left-hand side here, it is used extensively within the Coursera environment itself. Anywhere where you need to store configuration information, you use instantiators. And the parameters are accessible. You can, for instance, supply user-supplied values for this. You have the option here to mark something as final. When you do that, it means that I don't want users to submit values to override this. So obviously, like for a data source, if let's say a user is calling this from the browser, you don't want them to override, let's say, the URL. You don't want them to override the driver class name. So you mark it as final. But if you take this off and you make it visible to the browser by unchecking the server side only, then you can actually supply your own parameter values for some of these properties. Again, as I said, this is extremely powerful. There's a lot you can do with it. There are all kinds of interesting ways that you can use it. Again, check the documentation for detail on all the other things that you could do with instantiators. But I guarantee you, once you start using them, you would never want to fiddle around with, let's say, even a JSON file ever again for configuration. This is how you do it. You can compose objects with this. So right now we're looking at one instantiator. Let's look at another one that actually calls other CRUDs, right? So we're looking at a single level instantiator with the data source. But here's a system setting example which actually invokes other CRUDs. In other words, it calls other instantiator types. So you can get a composed object. So here you see it called this other CRUD, which has its own property called environment. It called this second one here called another CRUD, which has different properties: interval, enable, extension. So you can create any level of nesting in the object structure that is returned. So if you're creating, let's say, a data API out there, here's your solution. You'll never have to do any additional work to expose your data in the manner that you want to. So again, check the documentation. This is very cool stuff. I think you're going to be very happy once you get a hold of